Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending this afternoon's webinar. This is Alexis Gingerella. You should be familiar with this voice by now. We're talking about the first 100 days at your new recruiting gig. We've got a really exciting webinar for everyone today. So thank you again for being here this afternoon for another part of our educational webinar series. All right, now special thanks. Special thanks to today's sponsor, WePal. They're really great friends of ours here at Recruiting Daily, and without them, today's webinar would not be possible. So please head over to WePal's website, check out what they can do, and if you're interested in a private demo or getting in touch with them, you can always reach out to us at Recruiting Daily, info@recruitingdaily.com, and we would be more than happy to put you in touch with them. So thanks again, WePal, for making today possible. Here's the plan for today. As always, for housekeeping, you are in listen-only mode, meaning you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. So we encourage you to utilize your control panel to raise your hand and ask questions. If at any point in time maybe you don't understand something or want today's expert to explain further, use your control panel, please. Or you can follow along online. We are on Twitter live tweeting this using the hashtag #OurDaily, so feel free to put questions there as well. And as always, we are recording, so you will get a copy of today's webinar along with the presentation within 24 hours of us being live today. So we should be going here for probably about an hour, maybe a little less, and we'll have it to you shortly thereafter. So stay tuned and don't feel bad if you can't hang for the whole thing. We'll have it to you soon. And without further ado, I'm going to start launching it right over here to today's expert, Amy Miller. Now, Amy, it still says Microsoft, but don't worry. We know
that's how new I am in my new recruiting gig.
So if anybody at Google is watching, I'm going to take that full hit, Amy. I did not change that. But you're still new enough that we should have added in as part of the slides that what to do in the first 100 days is to make sure people change your title appropriately. Oh you do webinars for them. So
there's so many places to update it.
Amy from Google, everyone. Take it away, Amy.
Thank you, Alexis. Yeah, it's like getting married and changing your name. Like you don't realize how many places your stuff exists online or just in signatures. It's nuts. So yeah, I'm sure this is not the only place that still thinks I'm at Microsoft. So thank you so much for having me. I was so excited when you guys asked me about this particular topic because it was in kind of the very early stages. I think I was actually still negotiating with Google to potentially join their team. Like, I know this topic really well now. So yeah, I'm excited to share with you guys my experience. This is drawn not only from, obviously my own kind of what's happening in my life right now, 30 days into Google, but also, helping mentor other new folks that have joined my previous company when I was still there. And so just kind of drawing from a lot of those experiences, the fears, the things I've done horribly wrong, one or two things I might have gotten right. And then as always, I always want to leave you guys with some really specific questions you can ask and actions that you can take. So we'll talk a lot about kind of what to do, a little about what not to do, and then finalize it with some of those questions. Again, kind of open-ended, but hopefully things that can help spur conversation and just put you guys a little more at ease in those first critical 100 days, because it's hard. I've been doing this for 20 years and I feel like such an infant, in my new role. So it's scary for me. I'm sure I'm not the only one. So that's our agenda. So yeah, so I'm here. I'm starting my new recruiting gig. Now what? Now I'm terrified. I went from knowing everything and knowing what I was doing, and now I have to go start this brand new thing. So I broke this into a few different things. I kept, as I was reviewing this content and thinking about what I wanted to share, I kept going back to the prep. So some of this even is not even the first 100 days. It's like the first week. It's the pre-week. It's the time from accepting the offer and resigning to actually starting day one. So there's a lot of, I think, kind of mental stuff that I personally went through in those first couple weeks and leading up to actually joining Google. So I plugged a lot of that in here. So hopefully you find this helpful, and it's stuff I wish someone would have told me 6 weeks ago. So Assuming good intent. I love this slide so much. And if you have been on any of my other webinars or heard me speak anywhere, anytime, you have probably seen this. But this was so important. And I wanted to make sure we grounded in this because, coming into a brand new organization and joining a new team, you probably don't know these people. You might know some of them, you might know them just running in the same recruiting circles, but they're new and I'm new to them and they're new to me. And so really grounding in this positive intent and believing that your new coworkers are good, helpful people that are happy that you're there is so important. It's so easy to walk in with, kind of a chip on your shoulder or a little angst, well, what if this person wanted the job and then I got it and they didn't get promoted or something. You got to leave all that shit behind and don't even bring it in. Like, just focus on, I'm here, I want to do good work, and I'm 100% sure that all of these people are great and really want to be helpful and be good partners. So starting from there, grounding in that was super important for me. So, and then imposter syndrome. Okay, show of hands just amongst yourselves. Who feels this? Yeah, everybody, right? Anyone who says they don't is probably a liar. So I know Alexis is going to share this slide. I do have a link to an amazing article I found, kind of going through this. So again, kind of step two, what do you do the first 100 days? Relax. Seriously, just calm down. You were hired for a reason. I spent 5.5 years at Microsoft, and all through my time there, still had moments where I thought, how the heck did I get hired? I cannot possibly be the caliber of recruiter that they want. And how am I here? And how did this happen? So imposter syndrome is super real. Going then over, just recently going to Google, I went through that same kind of emotion. And I total transparent, honest moment here, even during negotiating my comp and kind of the early stages, like, hey, we want to hire you, and how do we make that happen? I kind of had moments like, oh, I don't want to push back too hard. I don't want to ask for too much. What if they change their mind? Seriously? Like, you've already been hired. It's all good. They're not going to change their mind. You have to really screw up badly for them to pull an offer, trust me. So just, again, kind of lean into that and read this article. It's a great article. There's actually different versions of imposter syndrome, which I did not know. I have spent time in all 5 of them, to be frank. But, it's okay to kind of congratulate yourself, pat yourself on the back, whether it's Google or it doesn't even matter what company it is or what kind of recruiting you're doing. You were hired for a reason. And so just be proud of yourself. It's okay to take a minute to just relax and enjoy your new job. All right. So, but now you're here, right? So now you're here. You're showing up on day one. The biggest thing, and I think this is harder for more senior folks, people who've been doing this a long time. I know I can be guilty of this myself. We come into a new role, and especially if we spend a lot of time in that, hey, I was hired for a reason because I'm smart and good and know stuff, we can sometimes come on a little strong. I have definitely done this in the past. I'm trying really hard not to do it now in my current role, hopefully not going too far the other way, but we'll get to that. So really learning the processes and the people. I asked kind of early in my onboarding before I'd officially started, sent an email to my new boss, trying to form those connections and figure out who I was working for and what I was going to be doing. And I asked, like, what does my first 30, 60, 90 days look like? And I don't think I ever really got an answer officially to that. And part of the reason, probably the main reason why I did not get an answer to that is because your first 30, 60, 90 days, at least in my company, you're just learning. You're just heads down, you're going to classes, you're attending training sessions. Like, I'm just now a month in starting to get involved in what I think is real work. And so as a recruiter, this is hard, right? Because you think, okay, I've been here for 12 hours. I should be like having a placement now, right? Like, where's my candidate? Where's my interview? Where's my send out, right? It's not all the agency in me but where's my send out? I've been here 2 days. Calm down. So again, in partnership with your manager, learning from your boss, taking those leads, where do I start learning? I know you were hired for a reason. I've already told you that. You know a lot, but now you need to come and learn some new stuff and figure out how does this well-oiled recruiting machine function. And let me add a caveat here. I know there's going to be some people that are like, listen, I was hired to break shit. I was hired to revamp things. I was hired to create brand new processes. I get it. And that will come. But right now, my best advice for you, especially first month or two in, figure out how it works today. There's going to be things that are still good. There's going to be certain processes that are put in place for a reason. It could be anything from compliance to a best practice to driving a certain outcome. Those are things that you're going to have to learn. So heads down, figure out what am I learning? Who am I learning it from? If you work for a large company, I've had the benefit of this at Google, of course. We have a pretty solid formal training plan. We have something that has been really well laid out for me. So I know, like, okay, I need to go and sign up for these classes, and I need to be in this meeting at this time, and so it's been great. But I've also had to really figure out how to make that work for me and figure out what kind of how do I want to pack my calendar? You know, the first couple weeks I was like all classes all day, and about week 3 I called my boss, I'm like, I cannot sit in another classroom. Like I need a break. I cannot go back and do this again tomorrow. So just being really transparent and honest about my personal learning style. Here's what works for me. Let me do something else, and then I'll come back to this next week. And that worked really well. So he was able to, connect me one-on-one with some other folks and encouraged me to reach out to those team members and start figuring out, hey, how do you do your work and those kinds of things, which we'll talk a little bit more about that. But again, so kind of balancing a formal training plan, if it exists, any specific classes, any study guides, those kinds of things with how you learn best. So don't be afraid to call that out and raise your hand and say, I need help. Like I kind of absorb things in a different way. How can we make that happen? So really owning that. One kind of interesting thing I learned about myself, and I think I always kind of knew this, but it was kind of interesting to see it showcased in this way. I was in some of these training classes recently, learning lots of great stuff, great content, super smooth. But I realized that I was one of 2 people in a group of probably 20 that were actually writing things down, like with a pen. It was kind of crazy. Like everyone else is typing away, and me and this other recruiter are kind of like, oh, guess we've been doing this a while. So just kind of an interesting aside. And I had a moment where I thought, oh my gosh, maybe I should start typing notes too. Like I don't want to look like the weirdo that writes things down with a pen, but that's my style. And I just said, this is what I need to do, and this is what works. Nobody cares. So figure that out for you. Figuring out your study guides, kind of learning from your colleagues, best practices, those kinds of things. And then also an onboarding buddy. Some companies do this really well. They have an official, like, this is your person, this is who you're going to work with. Not every company does, but I definitely encourage you to seek that out. Whether it's your manager, whether it's a senior person on your team, could be someone on a completely different team, but look for that 1 or maybe 2 people that you can lean on. I have an onboarding buddy, and she's amazing. First of all, she's been with Google for a really long time. And we just have a weekly sync. Like, even if I don't have questions, we still get together once a week and kind of go over, here's how I'm feeling. Here's what I think is really cool. Here's what I'm confused about. And just kind of talking through where I'm at with getting up to speed and where I feel like I'm need help or what I don't understand or what I think we should do different, those kinds of things. So it's a great sounding board, as well as just someone to really help you stay on track and make sure that you're kind of checking off the right boxes, right? So definitely recommend finding, if it's not an official buddy, just nominate someone. it's absolutely changed my life in the last month. And so that's also part of just kind of the overall relationships thing, right? So the relationship with your direct manager is critical. This person may or may not be the person that hired you. Okay, that was a big eye opener for me. I've actually been through this a few times in my career. When I joined Microsoft, I was hired by a manager who left 2 weeks after I started. So I immediately kind of in that onboarding was thrown into this brand new, like, oh, here's your new boss. And I did not know this person. I had never met this person. I had no idea what to expect. I was already feeling really new and insecure and all impostered up. So it was crazy, but a great learning experience. And then, of course, joining Google, hiring process is a little different than other companies. I had never met my boss, did not know my boss. I don't think he knew who I was until I showed up. So, but we are now a month in and really have the beginnings of what I think is going to be a really great working relationship. And he's fantastic. I mean, we have a regular sync. We've talked a lot about his leadership style, and I'm kind of learning like how he sees the team coming together. And so it's not even necessarily about like day to day how I do my work, but just how are we kind of collectively coming together, you and me, us and the team, me and my colleagues. So figuring out what that looks like, what a cadence looks like for him, the information he needs from me, so that he's comfortable with what I'm doing and the work I'm putting out and those kinds of things. And just as important as me understanding him, or maybe her in your case, whoever your boss is my boss understanding me. So don't be afraid to speak up. You owe it to yourself to teach your manager how to manage you or how to lead you. This is important. And again, there's going to be things you don't control. There's going to be metrics and expectations, and there's just going to be certain things that just are what they are. And hopefully you've kind of vetted that throughout the interview and offer process. You know what you're getting into. But I went out on a limb here and was very specifically clear with my manager and said, I really like to be left alone. I really, I'm not trying not to be a really needy employee. I don't need a ton of hand holding. I don't want to be checked on constantly. Like, let me come to you. If I need help, I will call you. Please don't call me. Now, if you have a leader who's very hands-on and very warm and wants to be really close, that can be tricky. So finding your balance there, and again, just speaking up and being very clear about here's kind of how I work best, and here's what I like in a manager, and here's the things that matter to me. Just having those really honest conversations, even if you're starting out on completely different sides of the spectrum, you can find middle ground. I mean, me and my boss have really, I think we found that. And again, I'm a month in, but I'm feeling really positive about where things are going, and I'm comfortable being super honest with him and kind of letting him know, what works for me, which is great. So manager, that's just one piece of it. You're also going to have colleagues. So understand, how does this team function? Again, going back to assuming good intent. I know you're all glad I'm here. I know you're all wonderful people. But let's figure out, how does this team function and where do I fit into it? A lot of recruiting gigs, you'll have, in some cases, a really clear divide between the sourcers and the recruiter. So they're working on maybe different sides of a candidate relationship or different interactions with hiring teams. So figure that out, even if it's completely different than what you've done before, even if you disagree, and you may fundamentally disagree and think this is the absolute worst way to do this, this is broken, we can't continue this way, let it go for the moment. We're talking about the first 100 days, okay? Rome was not built in a day. You are not going to fix this tomorrow. But talk with your colleagues, ask questions, listen, take notes, absorb, understand. You have to get that down first. You have to really understand the what's and the whys. Even if you don't like it and you try to change it later, that's okay. That's a different webinar. Right now, we're talking about, let me just understand how this all functions. I think it's also critical to understand how are your colleagues measured. Was a big thing in my last job, kind of the sourcing recruiting partnership. I think it's going to be similar from what I can see here. Sometimes sourcers are driven by a different kind of metrics or a different kind of picture of success. I need to understand that. So taking an example from my previous role, if I'm working with sourcers who are heavily metrics on offer accepts, for example, I need to make sure that I'm supporting those efforts and I'm putting the right candidates in front of the right hiring managers and influencing the right behaviors and uncovering why we're getting declines, things like that, to make sure that my sourcers are still they're achieving their goals. So again, just coming into a new place, then it's understanding that. Are we dealing with the same kind of metrics? Are we dealing with maybe the same kind of problems? Are there certain challenging clients or certain challenging types of roles that maybe don't get as much love for certain reasons? So just unpack all those things. We're not trying to fix it right now. We're just trying to understand it. Fixing will come later, or better yet, it's a well-oiled machine and you just get to insert yourself in it and get some quick wins. I don't know, it could go either way. But understand where your colleagues are coming from, really figuring out what's their emotional currency in this. And then meeting the cousins. I had an interesting conversation with my skip level manager, and we were just talking about, I've been in for like 2 weeks now, and who I've been meeting and what we've been talking about, and just kind of going over my onboarding up to that point. And he said, I really like to think of our recruiting team as a family, and we have my lead, who is super warm and kind and generous with his time, and then we've got maybe the black sheep, that's probably me. And just how our little team kind of all fits together, and how we interact, and how our strengths play off of each other. And then we started talking about kind of the external partners and some of the different people that we're going to interact with. So in my case, this is going to be people like our compensation teams, our schedulers, our just anybody kind of outside of the day-to-day, candidate hiring manager engagement. So meet the cousins. It's important to also start thinking about those relationships. I'm probably not going to make an offer anytime soon. The types of candidates that I'm currently working with, the work that we're doing, it's a very long process, and there's a lot of things that happen to get us kind of from nice to meet you to offer stage. So I may not really be working with a compensation analyst for another 2 months. I mean, I hope it's not that long, but we'll see. But it's okay to start trying to form those relationships now. And again, understanding what are the important things to you? What matters? How can I best prepare the data that you need so that you know what I need in an offer, et cetera. So again, kind of going back to how does my team function? How does the recruiting thing work here? And then figuring out where those extended family members are, getting to know them and making them your advocates, making them your friends. You get a lot more done with people who like you and know that you're there for the right reason and trying to do a good job than if you're just the asshole that comes in with, all kinds of broken stuff and you dump it in someone else's lap to fix. So don't be that guy. Be nice to your cousins. So quite a bit about what to do. Hopefully it was helpful and clear. But what not to do is just as important. And I will tell you, I've made all these mistakes. So learn from me. Not necessarily this time around, but in other roles for sure. Bring your skills, not your baggage. I probably should write this on my hand and read it constantly because this is a struggle. Again, hired for a reason, right? We've all joined this new company. We've gone to this new gig because we're great and know a lot and can get stuff done. But there's also the potential for bringing a lot of baggage. In my case, I think what's been most challenging this last month is I left a job I loved. I adore, to this day, I still love my previous boss. She's amazing, so as excited as I was about joining Google and doing this new piece of work and this really exciting thing that we're building, I was leaving a place that I loved and felt comfortable and felt smart and successful and surrounded by people that I absolutely adored working with. So for me, it's hard to remember, like, don't make those comparisons. These new people, my new family, are just as great. My new boss is just as warm. My new work is going to be just as rewarding. But that's something I have to kind of constantly remind myself that I am fully invested now in this new gig. And yes, all the great things I learned at Microsoft are going to be beneficial, and there's going to be things that I can accomplish here because of what I did at Microsoft, but I've got to leave some of the emotion and some of the baggage behind. The opposite could be true for you as well. You could maybe have left a job you absolutely couldn't stand. Maybe you could not wait to get out of there, and maybe you are like so excited about your new position because your last job was so terrible and your boss was such an ass. You're still at risk of bringing some of that baggage. So no bad mouthing. Same rules apply as I did during the interview. Do not talk poorly about your former employer. No matter how broken the processes were, no matter how terrible it was, you learned stuff from there. You hopefully did good work there. There's still positive things and skills and experiences that you can use for good in your new role, and just leave the negative outside the door. And then again, Rome was not built in a day. So a lot of us come in really kind of hot and heavy, like, I have these great ideas. I want to totally turn this thing upside down. I want the 6 people on my team to function in a completely brand new and different way that doesn't feel comfortable for them. You are not going to pull that off in the first 100 days. And if you do, you are probably going to leave some scars along the way. And that's hard. That's hard for me to say. It's probably hard for most of us to wrap our heads around, because we do want to move quick. We do want to have impact. We do want to get shit done. But you have to, again, kind of wait and see, okay, how does this all play together? What are some of the good things we do? What do I want to keep? And then what are just some kind of minimal little changes that I can make? What are some, maybe I have one idea to help streamline a specific part of the process. Maybe we can try to implement that slowly. That's how you get people on your side. And that's how you kind of get people bought in to what you're trying to accomplish here. So, but at the same time, don't wait too long. This is, again, a big struggle for me, because I do want to be a good partner. I want to learn. I want to do things the quote unquote right way. But you can't also like just sit back and wait to be told what to do. If you're doing that, then you're going to be 6 months in and you're not going to have made a single placement or not have any impact to show for your work. And they're going to be like, wait, why did we hire you again? So ask those questions. Don't wait around for someone to give you something to do. Ask where you can plug in. All right, so going to the next. Perfect. So questions that you can ask today, and I'm hoping, I don't see anything in chat, but I really, we got plenty of time. So if there's specific things that you guys want to go deeper on, questions that you might have, clarification that I can give you on anything, this is a great time to do that. Start putting in those questions, but things that you can specifically ask your manager in those first 100 days. And I'm gonna go a little out of order here, but what's a leadership style? Tell me about how you run your team. If it's a brand new manager, you might be going to work for someone who's never done this before. How do you picture this? Like, what would you like to see happen? Let's talk about dream state of the team going forward. Why did you choose this job? Why are you here at this company? So those are all great questions to ask, and just get to know your manager, get to know their leadership style, figure out how that, where there's a good sync with your employee style. And then also where things maybe don't align so well, like how do we make that work? How do we kind of put those pieces together that may look like they wouldn't normally fit? So for the benefit of both of us, me and my manager. How do I know I'm doing a good job? this is always tough for me. I think for recruiters, on the one hand is a very easy answer. You're making placements. You're getting people hired. That's kind of job one. That's why we're here at all, right? Um, but for a lot of jobs, it goes deeper than that. At Microsoft, it was really big on impact. It was less about the number of hires per se, and a lot of about who did we hire? What did they bring to the company? What was the resulting business impact? What did they influence, build, change, create, and so on? So it may not be like that in your next role. It could be a completely different kind of measure. So really dig into that. Like, what are you actually tracking? How do I know that I'm doing a good job? And again, these are open-ended questions, but the idea is to spur some conversation and to get your manager, your colleagues thinking about what does a successful recruiter look like here?
I
What should
mean,
I know? Yeah,
sorry,
no,
we do have
please.
a couple questions coming in. Someone wants to know how do you strike a balance with overlaps? So, like for example,
Yeah,
reaching out to maybe some same candidates and profiles and whatnot.
yeah, absolutely. No, this is a brilliant question, and I will tell you, I'm struggling with it like in this moment. Okay, so let me tell you a little story. um, in my previous job, there were very clear rules of engagement. You know, if somebody was tracked in the ATS or there was a conversation, I mean, there were very clear swim lanes. And if a candidate was at this place, you did not get involved. You worked with the recruiter, you figured out if there was a way to share. But other than that, you stayed off of it. Only 30 days in, so I may have this totally wrong, but it feels a little different in my current gig. Now, I will say I have the benefit of working for a company that has an incredibly robust ATS. It's amazing, and I don't normally say that about HR tech tools. So it's actually quite good. There's tons and tons of detail, tons of just information available to you. What I have noticed though is, at least as far as my limited month in knowledge, there doesn't seem to be as clearly defined rules of engagement. So my best advice, and the advice that I'm currently following for myself, is because right now a lot of what I'm doing is I'm just trying to generate candidates. I'm just trying to figure out where these very specialized people that I'm recruiting sit. What do they do? What does a good engineering manager for Google look like? Like, I'm really in those very early discovery stages. And so what that means for me is I'm looking at a lot of candidates. I'm looking at a lot of potential prospects. And frankly, a lot of them are already in our tool and have talked to somebody at some point. So best practice is just pick up the phone and call that recruiter. Hey, I'm kind of working on this project. I saw Joe Blow's profile. Looks like you guys had a conversation a month ago. I mean, what do you think? How did that go? Is he good for Google? So it also has the other benefit of kind of getting to know those cousins, right? So it may not be a recruiter you're working directly with, might be a totally different team, but you get to kind of, hey, I want to learn from you and your expertise and kind of understand how to be a good partner here, at the same time as driving those extra, kind of outside your immediate team relationships. Does that answer the question? Maybe kind of a little. I hope I hit on it.
I think you got it.
Yeah, it's a struggle though, right? Because if there's not really clearly defined rules, there is, and I've asked this question like every time I'm meeting with new people, I'm like, well, how do you guys handle this? And they all look at me like, what do you mean? Like, maybe it's not as big of a problem as I'm thinking it's going to be, because no one else seems worried about it. But I think it also ties back to, how we're metrics, and really the goal is get the right people hired at our company. So yeah, just ask those questions. Call recruiters who seem to be attached to your people, and just have a conversation.
What if you are a contract recruiter and only have a 3 to 6 month gig and don't have 100 days to try to perfect everything?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously totally different situation, right? You are the way, right or wrong, that this is kind of what I decided during my tenure at Microsoft, like how we view contractors, how we view FTEs. Contractors are generally brought in to perform a specific function. Now, contractors, my opinion, could be wrong, tend to fit in one of two camps. They like to just kind of come in, do some project work, get some stuff done, and go on to the next thing. Other contractors, and this is the kind of contractor I was years and years ago at Microsoft, I wanted to come in and prove myself and get hired as a full-time person. So that's going to look a little different, right? So it really, I think you have to really understand, what is my ultimate goal here? What do I really want to accomplish? And how do I get that goal? How do I achieve that with this limited time frame? You know, I've only got 6 months to prove myself. So first and foremost, what's my immediate job? What's the one thing that they've hired me to do? You're never going to get away from that. So really get good at that. And then in the process of that, you still can then find ways to, you know, as rules permit, I guess, you know, how do I kind of integrate myself with this larger team? How do I get to know people who can vouch for me? How can I create advocates in this organization if I'm wanting to eventually convert? So you have to kind of decide that as a contractor, which path you're on. First and foremost, obviously make sure you're meeting the right goals. You're churning out the X number of interviews or hires or whatever it is that you're kind of metrics on and what you were hired to do. But then if there is kind of that secondary, like, I really want to turn this into a full-time thing, you still have to kind of play a little bit of the long game. And I think in that case, it's really about the relationships. I've coached a lot of contractors on this, and, you know, it comes back to who's going to advocate for you. You know, are you making it known, like, yeah, I'm here to do a job and I'm going to do it really, really well to the best of my ability, but I have this other goal that I want to achieve, and make sure people know that. All right, cool. So I think we covered a lot of the manager stuff. You know, it's again, it's asking, how do I know I'm doing a good job? What can I do to help you? What do I need to accomplish? What are my, you know, what are my goals? What are my specific, if there's metrics I need to meet, things like that. So really getting clear on that. And then also secondary, ask your team questions. You know, one of the most, so there's a couple things I've tried to meet with everyone. I'm sure I'm missing some folks, but I've tried to have some one-on-one time with almost everyone on my immediate team. And I have two questions. First of all, how'd you get here? I want to understand your recruiting story. I want to know where you came from, how long you've been doing this, what you love, what you hate. Just tell me about you. People love talking about themselves, right? So that's usually an easy question for people to answer. It takes up a lot of time, but it's all good stuff. So, and then the second question is, what should our partnership look like? You know, how can I help, whether it's you meeting your goals, if you're a sourcer and I'm a recruiter, what's the best way for me to make sure your candidates are taken care of? So figuring out not only, hey, you, why are you here? What do you do? How do you do it? But then how can I kind of help complement that and make sure that you're getting done what you need to get done. I also like to ask the magic wand question. You know, hey, if you could change one thing, like I give you a magic wand or a genie in a bottle, and you can change one thing about process, any part of this thing that we're doing, this job that we have, what would you change and why? And that really gives you insight into pain points. And again, if you're kind of taking that long-term view and you're looking at, you know, I'm here to drive some process improvements, or I'm, you know, going to be at some point asked to, you know, kind of help shift some things. Now you're kind of gathering where there's some pain, and it helps you understand which problems you want to attack later, you know, in your 200 days, in your 300 days, and so on. Biggest priority, you know, that again just drives where you can plug in. If there's a specific, maybe very challenging client they're working with, a very, very tough to fill position that doesn't have enough pipeline, you kind of figure out what's keeping you up at night. And then how can I help? So in my case, again, 30 days in, still super, super new at this, barely know where the bathroom is. I've actually picked up some sourcing and like trying to help identify some prospects for this really tricky role that we have. So, you know, I don't know that any of those people are going to get into process or ultimately be hired, but I'm at least I'm trying to be helpful, you know, and so being able to come back to our, you know, main recruiter on that role and say, hey, here's who I've come up with. What do you think? Like she recognizes like, oh, Amy's trying to be helpful. This is good. Nobody would turn down free help, right? Like even if none of those people work out, just the idea that, hey, I'm here to kind of back you up and I want to make your life a little easier is typically very well received. So.
Amy, is the magic wand something good to mention during an interview?
Do I mention it during an interview?
Is it a good question? Somebody wants to know if it's one of the top priority
Yeah.
questions. Is it a good one to ask during an in-person interview?
I think so. Absolutely. Well, yeah, because you know, if you're kind of vetting the opportunity at that point, and you're like, do I really want to get involved in this? You know, you may get some answers to say, yeah, that's a train wreck. I'm not going to touch. You know, I don't know, but yeah, absolutely. I think that would be a great question to ask for sure. I wish I would have asked.
That's awesome. I love it. Okay, I have another one. So, so basically, going back to what you said about meeting the cousins, what
Yes.
are some more tips that you can share to make good advocates of your cousins?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, when I think about how this worked in my previous role, one of the strongest partnerships I had, believe it or not, was with my comp analyst. And so I don't know about anyone else's experience. A lot of times comp and recruiting are not necessarily on the same page, not even checking books out of the same library in most cases, to be honest. A lot of recruiters I know in various companies, I mean, their comp analyst is named Satan, right? This just it's not a good partnership all the time. But in my case, I think first of all, I just had a great analyst. I think he's just really smart and good. But the way I kind of drove that relationship is we spend a lot of time on the phone. You know, so much can be lost in instant message and email and some of those other mediums. So I would just get on a call whenever possible. If you can see them in person, even better. But I think just first of all, just being very kind of in the moment. Nothing can be lost in translation because we're actually talking to their life. And then also just being really transparent. Like I would be like, Joseph, this is what's making my head hurt. And I would just explain, like, this is what I'm up against. These are my competing offers. This is my, you know, whatever it is. And being super transparent and almost kind of oversharing maybe a little. But so that he understood really why I was asking for the crazy things I was asking for. And then at the same time, I'd be like, so tell me why this doesn't work. Like, I want to understand from your perspective, from your area of expertise, why I can't write a check this big, for example. And so just shutting up and listening and letting him explain in his very analytical, numbers driven, internal equity, all this kind of stuff. This is why we do what we do, and this is why we give you the answer we give you that you always hate to hear. So just understanding each other and listening to each other, it changed everything about that partnership. And frankly, again, I said before, I hated leaving my old job because I loved it so much. He was a big part of that too. Just a great partner. And so you want to just have, I don't know, I get really long-winded with this stuff, but you want to have that same kind of hopefully the same kind of interactions with your partners. And if it's scheduling, you know, again, what can I do to make this easier? And a lot of times, some of the feedback I've received from our operations team, even in this new role, is like, use this format for God's sake, you know, like this is what makes it easier for us to read. So if you really want to dump all the information in a window, you can do that, but it makes my job harder. Oh, okay. So you're saying if I take 30 seconds to put it in a format that you like, whether I think it should be or not is irrelevant, that's going to make it easier and you might get to my stuff sooner. Nice, get it. So just listen to people and try to understand where they're coming from and what your mess looks like on their desk.
Awesome. That's perfect. Let's see, I have a couple more. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, so you mentioned making little changes. So
yeah.
Like you had said before, like listening and everything, but what are some areas that other people still consider looking at, and how do you recommend kind of going about that? Make a recommendation, maybe giving your opinion without being asked for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and that is so tricky because you definitely want to look like someone who has put thought into this and who, you're not a robot. You're not going to just kind of come in and be a cog in the assembly line and just do things that have always been done. That's probably not why you were hired. I know it's not for me. So I think it starts with, first of all, really having a good handle on this is how we do it today. So understanding current state. This is the process we follow. This is the way things are tracked. This is the way things are assigned, whatever that may be. And so really understanding that and then identifying the problem. Okay, so if I wanted to come in and just say, I don't like the way we schedule interviews. This is, this tool doesn't, I don't like it, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's not a good enough reason to make change. But if you come in and say, by doing this particular part, I'm totally making this up, by the way, this is not really happening in my current job, but I'm just trying to give an example. So, but if you come in and say, okay, so we schedule interviews this way. We are taking on average 3 days to connect a candidate with a scheduler. And if we do it this way, we would actually save 2 days. So we would get people in process sooner. Can we try this change? That's how you implement something without looking like a whiner or you're just complaining or you just want to do something for the sake of change. You're actually able to say, here's a problem. Interviews take too long to get scheduled. Here's the specific change we can make. And then here would be the resulting outcome. Interviews are scheduled 48 hours sooner, so we don't run the risk of candidates losing interest because you know how they are. So is that helpful? I mean, I think you would kind of try to apply that to any scenario, like here's how we currently do it. Here's the potential problem from how we're currently doing it. Here's the proposed change. And then here would be the outcome of making that change. And that's really, and again, you may still get pushback. They may say, no, we get it. We appreciate it. We like that you're thinking of that, but we're still not going to do it. But you're showing up as someone who is looking holistically at not only a problem that potentially exists, but also a solution for it. And that right there, even if the specific change doesn't happen, you still are now starting to build that reputation as someone who's thinking of solutions and wanting to improve things.
Definitely. That's awesome. So back to what you said before about kind of the magic wand and kind of being the new kid on the block. Do you find that you need to kind of prove yourself right out the gate? Is there a hat trick? Is that what Ryan?
Yeah.
Out that you like to do to kind of prove to people that you should be there?
Oh, I'm gonna probably surprise myself with this answer, and I'm gonna say no. I think, and this is tough, right? Because I've been doing this for so long. I mean, imposter syndrome aside, like I know why I'm here. I know why people want to hire me. But that can so quickly show up in a not great light. I mean, that could really look arrogant if you're not careful. So I think it's tough because, we do want to impress our bosses. We want our peers to think we're smart. I think the most impressive thing a new person can do is shut up and listen. I mean, we're talking early stage, right? We're talking 100 days. We're not talking 6 months, even 30 days. Show up and listen. Ask questions. Seek to understand. If you have like a momentary like, oh, I thought of this thing. What do you think? It's okay to kind of vet those ideas and throw things out there. But I worry about the new hire that wants to come on too strong, right? Like in our urgency to prove ourselves and in our quest to like, I deserve this job and I should be here and I was hired for a reason, in trying to maybe prove that too soon, it actually runs the risk of coming across as I mean, at the very least, just insensitive to how things are currently being done, right? Even if things are being done maybe not great, it's been working on some level for some length of time. Let's understand that first before we kind of come in guns blazing and try to prove everything. I think prove that you can be a good listener and that you can be teachable is the best thing you can hope to prove in the first 100 days.
That was going to be kind of my next question, like what is one of the best things to prove? But okay.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned earlier about, obviously you don't want to talk shit on your previous employer and say negative, but a lot of times that's something that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Because obviously you're leaving the job for a reason. What if you can't think of a good enough reason? Is it just a matter of basically like word feud almost and just trying to figure out the nicest way to say the meanest thing possible?
Yeah, well, I think, the question I would ask is where are we trying to go with that discussion? I mean, is somebody saying like, hey, why did you leave XYZ company? And we're looking for an answer. Hey, I'm just super excited about ABC company. That's why. That's it. That's all. I'm just happy to be here. So, I think it depends on obviously the context. You may run into situations where people are trying to find dirt. Recruiting is a small community. We all know each other on some level, so it's tough, right? Like we all kind of want that gossip, like, wow, how was it really over there? What was it really like? And did you work for that person? And weren't they an asshole or whatever? So it's tough, right? But I think for me, and I work with some former colleagues from my previous company, and even just amongst ourselves, like we try really hard to be careful about the negative stuff. And I always say the challenge I had was never a problem, never an issue, always a challenge. So just think about what benefit is going to come from that discussion. If it's just simply conversational, hey, why did you leave? It's very, very easy to turn around and say, I left because I got to come here. If it's, hey, what was really broken over there? It's okay to say, this was one of the challenges that I personally had. Here's what I tried to do to maybe try to affect that. It didn't work out for whatever reason. And so now I'm here. I think that's okay too, because again, kind of goes back to what we talked earlier about being the problem solver. Like I recognize that this is something that could be done differently, AKA better. Here's what I recommend we try to do to make it better. Sometimes those aren't well received for whatever reason, and that's okay. So it was time to move on and do something different.
All right, and we'll got one more. We got time to do one more. What happens? How do you approach, say, a position if you're the person being hired because they want to make changes to processes?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple things. I think first of all, make sure you have your advocates lined up. A lot of times that's probably your higher ups, right? That's going to be your boss who specifically said, I'm bringing you here to break shit. So, great. Make sure that, you still want to drive those relationships. So you still want to get to know who are the players, who are the, the different operations, comp, HR, the different partners that you're going to kind of pull into this. Who's going to be affected by your changes? So you're coming in to totally revamp this or redo things or whatever. You want to make sure that you not only have kind of your top level advocates, the people who have hired you and empowered you and given you the budget, given you the free reign, whatever that may be, to make these changes, but then also make advocates of the people that are going to be affected by what you're changing. So thinking about if we're going to bring in a new scheduling system, talk to your schedulers, understand what they like and don't like about the current system, what they want to see differently. My biggest frustration, one of in a previous, not even just my most recent role, but even other roles besides that, was when somebody goes and buys some fancy new tool and then comes back and says, hey, we bought this for you, now go learn how to use it and it's going to make recruiting better. Bullshit. You know why? Because you didn't talk to a single recruiter. Nobody bothered to ask me what I wanted in an ATS or what I needed in a a CRM tool or what kind of sourcing tools I wanted, those kinds of things. So don't come to me with your proposed solution when you never bothered to ask me what was broken in the first place and what would genuinely make my life better. So talk to those people first. Doesn't mean that you're going to give them what they're asking for, but at least have the conversations, ask the questions, and understand the pain points of the users and not just whatever pie in the sky, dream scenario you and your bosses have thought up. I got a little bit of a soapbox there, sorry, but that I think you got to understand the people that are going to be impacted and try to create solutions that are going to work for them. But also, I know we're getting close on time. You are still going to have naysayers, and that's okay. So kind of prepare yourself for that. Like if you still can approach, 3 months from now and you've done your research, you've done your due diligence, you've talked to all the right people, you've driven all the right relationships, and you're still coming and saying, I'm proposing something that's going to be really, really uncomfortable and not feel great, that's okay. You're probably preparing yourself for a different conversation with people who don't want to get on board. Maybe those people should move on to something different now. I don't know. I'm kind of going way off on a tangent now, but again, you don't want to be afraid to make the right changes and implement new processes or new tools or whatever that might be. But I think that's something that only comes after at least a few months of very careful consideration, conversations, and relationship building.
Awesome. I like it when you get on a soapbox. No, that was awesome. And we had a couple people just chime in to say thank you because they love your energy. So I love when people do that.
Thank you.
No, I can't go questions. I'm like, they're just saying how awesome Amy is.
Oh, you guys.
But, I mean, that's getting us right up to just about an hour, so we'll go ahead and call it a wrap. But thanks, Amy. That was amazing. Bring your soapbox next time, too, because I thoroughly enjoy it, and I know the audience does as well. But yeah, thank you so much. Thanks again to WePal for sponsoring so we can have Amy on today. And Amy, again, sorry about that initial slide. I totally know you're at Google. I was just...
Hey, I still don't even feel like it sometimes. It's so crazy and new to me, too.
Well, I appreciate you being here. And again, we'll get everybody a copy of the recording and the presentation here very soon. So just stay tuned and keep a look out for that in your email inboxes. And thanks again, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Amy. And everybody, enjoy your afternoon, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.